I hope you clicked on this video if you're the person that I was 3 years ago, full of hope, wonder, curiosity, or you started out watching PewDiePie and then you've fallen down a YouTube hole. Probably want to go back to the cat videos now. Or maybe you want to work on a cruise ship. This is where your life changes. Yeah, probably not. So back in 2014 I was working as a glass collector in a nightclub in Plymouth when the Wheel of Plymouth that I was working at got taken away to France. Cheers, France. And I felt just about ready to do something different. I had considered working on a cruise ship before. I'd even applied, I'd got accepted, and that all fell apart when they found out that I didn't have a passport. Apparently that is something you need if you want to work on a cruise ship. So tip number 1, passport. So I got my passport and I applied for a company that a few of my friends had worked for. I got an interview, I got the job, I was going. It all was a complete whirlwind at that point. I was carried along by the fact that this was what I was going to do now. I'd never been abroad before, and suddenly I was going to experience countless countries in a very intense period of time. Now, I tried to do my research prior to applying for these jobs because I wanted to really understand what I was getting myself in for. I'm not sure there's ever enough research you can do into doing something like this. Obviously I searched the web for all the articles and videos I could find of people who had worked on cruise ships, articles from companies. I talked to my friends who had worked on the cruise ships, but nothing they told me, even though I understood the ins and outs of what life was actually going to be like, what daily life was like, nothing can prepare you for how you feel when you're on a cruise ship and how the sort of person you are reacts to the environment that you're in, because it's just bloody intense. I googled lots of weird questions like what do I do if I get stuck in Russia, or can you work on a cruise ship if you can't swim? You can. I felt pretty well informed. I'd researched from like a pessimistic kind of angle because it just sounded too good to be true. The whole life, you know, you get to travel, you get paid to do it, and you get to meet loads of new people, it's exciting, it's adventure. So when I was researching, I was kind of looking for like the holes in it of being like, why doesn't everyone do this? Because this is kind of crazy that this is something you can do and not everyone is trying to do it. And what I didn't find was anyone really saying the realities about how difficult the life is. There were people who would list the downsides, but they were listed in a sort of like factual way, like you have to share a cabin, you have to do this, you have to do that. But when it comes down to how you will react to these sort of rules and ways of life, there was no one really explaining how that feels. So I want to make this video as a sort of more emotional side of how it feels to work on a cruise ship, specifically for someone like me who's an introvert, how you deal with life and whether it's worth doing it. I want to make this something that 2014 me would have wanted to see, to make an informed decision about doing it. And if you're someone who already works on a cruise ship, or indeed someone I worked with on a cruise ship, you know, this might be quite interesting to hear about like what it was like for me and how different people deal with these situations, because some people I know still on cruise ships and I do not know how they're doing it. There is literally so much to say about ship life, but I should probably start with one of the things that might surprise people, and that's freedom. Lack of freedom, specifically. Now, yeah, okay, you're probably like, what do you mean lack of freedom? You are travelling the world, but there are so many different types of freedom, and geographical freedom is a specific one and actually not something you get on cruise ships. You go where the ship goes, and you don't have a say in that. You go when it's going, or you almost miss it, like Barcelona. But you got things like freedom of expression, freedom of choice, freedom of the mind. There's so many different types of freedom, and really it taught me what kind of freedom is really important to me. I don't really... oh, it's gonna sound bad. I don't really care about travelling. It was great, don't get me wrong, it was fantastic to see all these places that, like, me and my existence can say that I went to, but for me, it didn't really make a difference. I want to go to these places with people that I love. No offence to anyone I went to these countries with, but they were people I didn't choose to travel with. They were people who also worked on the ship, and some of them were great. They were fantastic people, but I just kept thinking, I wish my friends were here. I wish I was doing this in a different scenario where I was travelling by my own choice rather than going where the ship was going. There's also this thing called IPM, which is in port manning, and it basically means that there's a certain number of crew members that have to be on the ship at all times, in case there's an emergency to get guests off. So every few ports, you actually don't get to leave the ship. You arrive in this amazing place, you're in Venice, you're in Barcelona, you're wherever, but you're not allowed to get off. And after being stuck on the ship for like 3-4 sea days, sometimes a lot more, that's a really hard thing to deal with. You have to know how to crowd manage vast amounts of people who are scared because they heard that there's a fire in the engine room, which happened once, and it was 2 a.m. and I was in bed, and that was horrible. And you have to stand there in your pyjamas, I probably should have changed, and tell people that it's fine. It's still totally going to be fine when you're there internally screaming because you're in the middle of the sea and there's a fire in the engine room. So the sort of military, like think the Navy kind of rules that you have to abide by. Moving on from the work environment, there's also a massive social environment on cruise ships, and this is where the part where I'm an introvert really is relevant. The person I was on cruise ships is not the person I am on land. I am a completely different person, like 100% different. The people who only ever knew me on cruise ships, you did not know the real me. I would finish work and I'd go back to my cabin and I wouldn't want to talk to anybody. It would be a sort of complete shutdown, and I would actually get quite angry if someone tried to like talk to me. You share a cabin. Most roles on cruise ships means that you share a cabin if you're not an officer. If you're lucky, you only share with one person. If you're any lower down in the ranks, you can share with 6 or 7 people, which I just never have done. It means that you never have your own space. Never. You work 7 days a week for 6 months or more, and you're never alone unless you actively go and hide or like jump off the ship. Don't do that. So the party is a big side of cruise ships. A lot of people use it as like a holiday. That's not really a holiday, it's a shit holiday if that's what you're using as a holiday. It's what a lot of people talk about when they say what's good about working on cruise ships. I think what people list most commonly will be the travel and then meeting people from different places and the partying. It's a big side of it. And I love to party, but that's on land. When I have my own time and my own space to myself as well. But yeah, on land I will go out all the time, and I love going out and seeing friends. I'm going out tonight and I'm pretty excited about it, and I'm going out tomorrow and I'm pretty excited about it, and I'm actually going out the next day and I'm pretty excited about it. But right now I'm alone and I can do what I want. And that's what gives me the energy to do those kind of things. So the act of partying, you might think that you're quite a party animal, but if you're the kind of person that also needs time alone, you're not going to want to do that, because when you've worked a 14-hour day and you've got to be up in 8 hours and someone expects you to go and sit in the bar for 3 hours, there's no buffer of time. It's just work and be around people all day and then go to the bar and be around people and then sleep a couple of hours and then get up and be around people, and doing that for 6 months with no break. It's so intense, and you have to be a certain type of person to be able to deal with that. And you know, doing this for a year and a half, it was a big chunk of my life. I regret doing it when I did, because I had some things going on in my career and in my life, and I told myself that I needed to just go and do this amazing thing because it was something that everyone was saying how incredible it was. But when it comes down to it, if I'd have stayed, I feel like I would have been a lot further ahead in my career right now, because there were relationships I could have nurtured and I didn't. I just abandoned them and left. And now I kind of am back at square one. But they also taught me amazing things. One part I haven't even discussed is the actual photography. And if this is relevant to you, then this is a whole different section of working on a cruise ship. So you're both seen as vermin, but also you feel a little bit like you know what you're doing. There's a lot that requires a little bit of photographic know-how. There were things like workshops where we would teach people how to use cameras, and I was teaching people twice, 3 times my age how to work a camera, or how to frame a subject, or how to use white balance, or how to use the exposure triangle. And that's incredible. That fills you with a sense as a photographer of like, I know what I'm doing. But then you're also torn down all the time by all the people who literally, and I mean literally, tell you to fuck off when you try and take a photo of them. Being in the state of mind I was on a cruise ship, having a 50-year-old man tell me to my face to fuck off was not enjoyable. There are people on cruise ships who are massively into the photos, and they come there specifically to get photos. We've had people who have said, I booked this cruise because I want the photos from the cruise. I want the formal night pictures, I want the pictures on the gangway. A lot of people who maybe aren't so into it will buy a couple, just as a memory. It's a nice thing to have. But there is also the section of people who hate your guts and want you to go away, but just because of that section of people doesn't mean we should leave. And when it comes down to how forceful you are in taking the pictures, it's a very much a psychological thing. A lot of people might say that they don't want a picture, but I've worked in tourism photography for 10 years. I can tell you that when people say they don't want a picture, they don't always mean that. I've had people who have been outright bastards to me about having the picture taken, but when they've seen it, they buy it because they like it. I think the last thing that I'd want to talk about, going back to cruise ships in general, is night. Sounds weird, but if you're on a ship for 6 months, you don't really see night. For me, I didn't realise how important nighttime was, because generally you'll be inside all night. I absolutely adore, especially the city at night. The couple of overnighters we did have, I think we did like 4 overnighters, and there was no comparable feeling to getting off that ship and being on land at night. It was a really weird feeling, but it was amazing, and that's something that I didn't realise I needed. So, in summary, if you're an introvert, don't not go on cruise ships. This is, not a video that's meant to make you go, hell nah, but I would have wanted to hear this before I left. I would have wanted somebody to talk really honestly about what it's like. You're going to get a lot of hostility from people if you're in the photography department. You're going to be around people 24/7 for 6 months at a time. You're going to be expected to be involved in drills and IPMs. It's very military. So if you think you can deal with that, go for it. If you don't think you can deal with that, go for it anyway. Because you won't know if you don't try, and you'll always regret not trying things. Gotta stop having a freaking moral to these. It sounds pretentious.